Good morning. Lettuce is good for you. Lettuce, when getting pounded by hail, means that somebody has to run outside and rescue it from the deck. Which is why that one's a little worse for wear. It has several bullet holes in it. We got pounded by hail for about 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, object lesson, object. Oh. So yeah, it was running down flooded out the side again, swamped the door, little leak in the basement. But I saved the lettuce and the roses. This is our second sermon in the series. Today we're looking at a verse from Hebrews chapter 6 and the section in Hebrews chapter 10 with the idea of let us mature. The calling that I'm putting together in all of these is that they're a call for maturity. Last week I introduced you to some facts about lettuce. You may not remember everything about the sermon, but I'm thinking some of you will remember the answer to these questions. Lettuce belongs to the sunflower family. Of course, Abby, being a bit of a skeptic, said, "Did you find that on multiple sites?" And I said, "Obey your father." Said, "No, I found it interesting. I'm going to quote it." It originates where? What part of the world? In the Mediterranean. That's where it started. And the largest producer, 23 metric tons, are produced. A lot of the world gets their lettuce from China, not us. No, a lot of ours comes from the States or Mexico, but we do have a number of lettuces that are grown here and are done locally, even on your own deck. The three main types of lettuce are leaf lettuce, head lettuce, and cos or romaine lettuce. Why they have two names, I don't know. 7 major varieties. We have leaf, romaine, iceberg with an E. Somebody, not pointing out names, said, "Why did iceberg have 2 different spellings?" Said, "Because nobody else would notice." It does have an E. Iceberg, butterhead, summercrisp, stem, and oilseed. Stem and oilseed are unique to us because stem just isn't grown for the leaves at all. It's for the stalk. And oilseed is just grown for the seed heads, multiple seed heads. And each plant produces 1 seed, which I thought was interesting. If we let these go and grow up, each one of these heads would grow up a 3-foot stalk with 1 seed that would blow in the wind and then grow. It's been around a long time. Ancient Egyptians cultivated lettuce about 6,000 years ago, and we also know that it was important both to the Romans and the Greeks, or else you wouldn't have Greek salad, would you? Would they make it with lettuce? And the Greeks, they thought it induced sleeping. So if you haven't had lettuce this morning, I appreciate that. So you're not going to nap off while we talk about this. That will be helpful. But why are we talking about lettuce? Well, the passages come up throughout the Bible. There's a number of passages we're going to look at right through till the fall, looking at from several authors and several books. This month we're looking at the ones from Hebrews. But lettuce is a part of the majority of our lives. It's part of our daily life. We have, in our home, we have a salad or lettuce around pretty constantly. And I thought the object lesson part of it could be that every time you're out and around and buying lettuce or using lettuce, that it helps you try to remember what we were talking about. What's the sermon series and what were the passages, what were those themes? So lettuce may induce some memory loss. I don't know. We'll see. How well did you do with Hebrews chapter 4? What was the major theme? Let us let us enter in. All those passages were about making sure that you and your relationship with God is where it needs to be. Unlike others that fell away, it's a challenge in chapter 4, so that let us enter in. Chapter 4, verse 1, let us be careful to not fall short of entering into God's rest by combining the good news with faith. They had the opportunity to enter the promised land in the Exodus, but they believed the 10 bad spies instead of the 2 good. So they fell away. They didn't combine it with faith. And so he encourages the readers there, let us be careful. let us be careful to not fall short. Wouldn't that be something to get very close to the end and then just give up? But lots of people do. And so the writer in Hebrews reminds that audience, don't step back. Now's the time to focus on your faith, not to just put it aside. This is not a time for coasting, it's a time for investment. Verse 11, let us make every effort to enter God's rest. That doesn't sound occasional to me. Let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. Don't let anybody try to snatch it away. Don't let anybody try to manipulate it or change it. You hold firmly to the faith that we profess. And verse 16, let us approach the throne of grace with confidence because of what Jesus has done. Our salvation is not based on our works, but of the accepting of what God has done, and then we have a changed life because of that. So all of those, to me, in chapter 4, I put them together with that theme, let us enter in. Remember that our spiritual health is the most important aspect of our lives. Where we are with God and being prepared to spend eternity with Him is of great value. It's not something to ever get put on the back burner. That's the forefront of why we exist. It can be taken selfishly to say, well, I only exist so that I get to heaven. That's not what he's talking about in Hebrews, because he's talking to the group about let us. It's not let you, but let us enter in. That the faith of others is important. In today's sermon, we're going to be taking a look at those passages, which I just skipped. Hebrews chapter 5, 11 through 6, 3, and Hebrews 10, 19 through 25. Because they have a theme that unites to me, and that's the call to maturity. The Christian faith is a living faith, is it not? It's not just something that we know and accept and it stays there. It's a living faith. It's centered in a living and active God who calls us to be His children. It's not only a living faith, but it is therefore a maturing faith. Think of the agricultural images that Jesus used. Think of the agricultural images as they occur through the Bible. Images of seed, of trees, of pruning, and even of harvest. They all connect with that expectation of maturity, don't they? Do you remember Jesus ever saying, faith is like a rock. Once you have it, that's it. No, faith is a seed. It's a plant. He always had images of maturity, of growth. So, the question that I'm going to ask, that I want you to think about, what are the traits of a maturing Christian? So if we're supposed to have faith, if faith is something that is supposed to continue to grow, if God talks a lot about maturity, what are the traits of a maturing Christian? And there's a value in thinking through that. Because the other side of it is, how well do those traits describe you? Maybe you might think of the faith of somebody else. Well, they're mature because. But what about you? How do you evaluate, quantify? How do you examine your own life and say where you're at in your maturity? And how will that change in the next 6 months? Because isn't that an interesting part about faith? Just like these little lettuce, which we bought not as seeds, we bought as starters. This week they look different than last week. Did you notice? 1, we harvested some of it. And 2, they've grown bigger. What about you? What is your faith going to look like in the next 6 months? How are you going to be more mature as a Christian? The challenge is we have a summer slowdown. How do you continue to grow through the summer? Our faith, our love, our trust, and surrender to God all grow as we draw closer to God and walk with Him. Relationships change over time as God has called us to an amazing relationship with Him through our faithful brother Jesus. How are you doing with this? How are you maturing? How have your thoughts, your actions, your motivations, and your love for God changed over the last while? In what ways are you stronger than you were? Is that not a mark of maturity? Being able to extend yourself further, be able to do more than you used to? What opportunities are you taking on? What challenges are you able to face that you weren't able to face? How have you matured, and what has helped? What spiritual goals do you have? And how will you reach them? Not just as an individual, but maybe as a family, maybe as a congregation. What are our goals? How do we mature one another to greater steps? What does it look like in the future? I think the call to maturity is so overreaching in the New Testament, and interesting to me that it comes up in these passages. But it's never about mature to earn salvation. It's always mature because of Jesus. Because you can approach the throne of grace with confidence. You don't have to work on that part. Work on the expression of the thankfulness of what God has provided. The let us in this passage is going to come from chapter 6, verse 1. But there's a little preamble here that is important. The Hebrew author says, "We have much to say about this, but it's hard to explain because you are slow to learn." That usually isn't the best way to get a group to listen, is it? To start with, "I would tell you more, but you're kind of dumb." In fact, though, by this time, you ought to be teachers. You need someone to teach you the elementary truth of God's Word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. What was his expectation? You should be past this, but you're not. You're slow to learn. Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teachings about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature. And then how does he define or explain maturity as he's talking about at this part? Who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. What's a sign of maturity? It's constant, it's in use, and you're able to distinguish. You're able to realize the difference between good and evil, better choices and lesser choices, and even wrong choices. And you make better choices. Then he gets to the therefore. As I said, if you want an interesting study of Hebrews, do a word search of every therefore, and then read the next line. Because you're going to get a summary of the entire sermon, the entire message after every one of those. Therefore, let us, not let you or let me, but let us leave the elementary teachings about Christ and go on to maturity. Not laying again the foundation of repentance from acts that lead to death and of faith in God. Instructions about baptisms, of the laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead, and eternal judgments. And God permitting, we will do so. Therefore, let us leave the elementary teachings about Christ and go on to maturity. There is an expectation to maturity, of maturity. Eating solid food is a step of physical development, is it not? Would there be a little bit of concern if you were just eating those little jars of baby food at your age? I mean, you get to the point where you're back to that, but it's not because of maturity. Would you be a little alarmed at somebody that that's all that they ever ate? Just milk from a bottle? Would that not seem a little odd to you? We're not designed for that. That's for a phase, but we go on to solid food. The solid food here is the ability to distinguish good from evil. He says there are elementary teachings and there are mature teachings. Did you notice what the elementary teachings are? Maturing in faith allows us to handle different questions. The basics mentioned here are leaving the old life. See that? That's a basic teaching, isn't it? If you're going to follow Christ, you need to leave the old life. You need to have faith in God. Then he talks about instructions about baptisms. How many people get stuck there? And that's all that you can't get past that. But he says that's a basic teaching. Because And then another one, laying on of hands. That's a basic teaching. Resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment. All those are the ones that he lists as basic teachings. Even in these, there's a basic level and there's a deeper level to every one of these. Come to our Wednesday class and we'll talk about some of the deeper teachings about what it means about resurrection of the dead and eternal judgment. Haven't we gone into a can of worms with those two questions? There's a basic understanding and then there's a deeper understanding even of basic issues. Maturity is being able to handle those and saying, what's next? Where am I at? What does God want? So how are you doing with understanding and teaching? Right? Let us means it's not just what do you understand, but who are you teaching? Teaching the basics, and then what are you working on? There is the expectation of maturity to then share this with others. By this time you ought to be teachers. Didn't he say that? But you're not. You're only thinking about yourself. Our next section, the next let us, comes much farther in Hebrews. We're going to jump all the way to chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, 19 through 25. Greg looked at it last week in the Lord's Supper. Dick emailed me early this week to say, what are you doing with verse 24? I said, teaching it. That's not what I meant. So yeah, we came to a compromise about how we're handling that verse. It's all right. After the section in chapter 6, the writer has been discussing the certainty of God's promise, how Jesus is the high priest like Melchizedek. Jesus is a high priest of a new covenant. Jesus' connection to the greater tabernacle instead of the earthly one, and how Jesus' sacrifice was once for all. That's kind of the major themes from chapter 6 getting into chapter 10. So we're going to pick up at chapter 10, 19, with an encouragement to mature and also the expectation to help other people mature. Starting at verse 19, guess what? What's the first word? You'll find that comes up a lot in Hebrews. Therefore, brothers, what's it based on? Since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, and when he says since, he means it. I've already proved that these are true, is what he's saying. We've already looked at this, and you know that these things are true. Since this is true, if this, then what? These are the truths that the writer has spent the time addressing. Then there's the encouragement for action. If these things are true, then what do you do? What is next? Verse 22, the first application of those truths. Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. The call is to draw near to God. That immediately made my mind think of James 4, 7 through 10. Come near to God and he will come near to you. But it says, let us draw near to God. That is, you do the action. It's an encouragement. Here's your response. Now, God has done his part. Now, what do you want to do? You need to draw near to God. Notice the qualifiers. Draw near to God, just not however you want, is it? How do we approach the throne of grace with confidence? How do we make sure that we know where we're at in this relationship? We do so with a sincere heart, with full assurance, with a heart cleansed of a guilty conscience. I think that's talking about the constant state of repentance, that sin bothers us, and so we always turn back towards God. We acknowledge our guilt, we acknowledge our sin, and we turn back. That our heart is being sprinkled, it's been cleansed, and is being cleansed, and our body's washed with pure water. That seems to me a good connection to baptism. Why is he teaching that? Because God has done these things. Here's how we can draw near to God. But it's also a step of maturity, isn't it? The next one, Verse 23. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. For he who promised is faithful. The call is to hold to the hope. What's the next two words? Do you see that's your action? Too often we have such an individualistic faith that I have my hope, but I don't profess it. This is, you hold on to the hope that we profess. It was assumed that it was the same thing for the whole group. We are all trying to teach the same truth here. We hold unswervingly. Do you like that word? Because it doesn't come up a lot. You think of another passage where it does? There isn't. It's the only time in the Bible that that passage, that Greek word comes up. Unswervingly. It can be translated unbent, unyielding, resolute. I like the last one. Firm. Let us hold firm. Let us hold unbent. Let us hold unyieldingly. That has a little more of a solidness to me. We hold to this hope and we profess it to ourselves and to others. We hold this way because Jesus is faithful, for he who promised is faithful. It's always based on the work of Jesus. If Jesus has been faithful, then we can too. Then we get to 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Before we get to the word spur, we have the word consider. Let us consider, that is, to fix one's eyes or mind upon. To consider not in the sense of I thought about that once, but I constantly think about this. Where other people are at in their faith, how I can encourage other people to grow, even if it means spurring them on. People that get stuck, that need a little kick in the butt. If that's what they need, would I be willing to do that? Let us consider. Don't let it out of your mind where people are at in their faith. And what we need to do to motivate, encourage, even spur others on. If we think that that would help them. But as Dick was saying, it's not the only way to handle this spur idea. I didn't tell him I was going to use this translation. The New Living Translation for the same passage says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. So I can go with that one. Let us think of ways to motivate. Do you like the sound of that? Does that make more sense in where? But it focuses both on your thinking and your thinking of other people to motivate them. What are you motivating other people to? Love and good deeds. That's kind of the basics of maturity. How are you more loving, and how is this combined with an act of life? What are the actions connected to your faith? Well, if people don't like 24, they certainly don't like 25. Let us. This is unique in the let us passages. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. One, we have two let us. Let I? Let them? What's the plural of lettuces? Let I? Let I? Two lettuces. You have two of those in this passage. What's the first one? It's the only one that's a negative. Is that important? Hard to say this one in the positive. He says, let us not. Let us not. Let us not give up meeting together. Well, spur is a word that's translated, and we may take it a little harsh, but let us not give up meeting together. That's a word that's translated a little weak. The New American Standard Bible, which is a Bible that translates more the specific sense of each word rather than how the words relate as a sentence, this same word is translated, let us not abandon. This, as the Greek word comes up in other passages, it's translated abandon, abandon, desert, forsake, forsaken, forsaking, or left. How does that change the intent of the passage? How about if you add something like Matthew 27:46? Is that passage coming to mind? My God, why have you give up meeting with me? Does that have a different sense? It's the same word. When we say on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's the same word here. Let us not give up meeting together. Let us not forsake. Let us not abandon one another. That abandon is a strong word because we have such an emotional connection to that. If somebody abandoned you, that's hurtful. Let us not abandon one another. This passage is so much more than Sunday morning worship, is it not? This is about counting on people walking together, working with one another, and then they quit. They leave you. They abandon you. They forsake the assembly. You can't rely on them anymore. They step back. It certainly applies to worship service too, but it's much more than that. Worship attendance, it's a call to not abandon, desert, or forsake the church, but rather invest in it through constant encouragement right up till the day of judgment. Instead of forsaking the church, abandoning it, what do? You invest in it. Let us encourage one another. All the more as you see judgment approaching, all the more as you see the day approaching. You invest in the church and the work of the church and the people of the church right up till the end. That's going to help you not give up on people and walk away. These concepts fit well with a maturing view of the church as we see our interconnection and need to invest in one another instead of the selfish, childlike view which connects to the church only at times of need or convenience. I'm here when I want something, rather than I'm here because you need me. I'm here because I'm a part of this. I'm here because where else would I be but with God's family? Maturing Christians are part of the church because they know that others depend on them and they offer their lives to serve Christ and His bride. And we're thankful for the mature Christians of the congregation that you know you can count on them. You know their complete investment in what's going on here. Their involvement at all levels, in Bible classes, in worship, in planning and scheduling, praying for the future, inviting others in. That's signs of maturity. Is that constant, overarching investment. I also put in here Hebrews 10:39. The rest of the chapter is a call to persevere and not shrink back. That's verse 39. These let us passages, they're helpful for us today as they reaffirm the course that we're on and help us to adjust the course back to doing what we know is right when we veer off course. They're a call to focus on specific actions. Today's section, we've been called to take maturing our faith seriously, to draw near to God with the purity provided by Jesus, to hold firmly to the faith and profess it, to invest in the spiritual health of others, and to not abandon the church but focus on encouraging others to not shrink back, but encouraging people to persevere till the end. I see all of those linked with that one reminder to let us mature. We started with let us enter in. That's a little more individual. Let us mature is a call for let us mature. So as we take it home, let us remind you. When you take a look at it this week, let it remind you about where you're at with maturity and interconnection to the congregation. Consider where you're at in your faith. When was it the strongest, and why was it strong then? When have you struggled the most with your faith, and what led to the struggle? How are you investing in the maturity of the congregation? Who depends on you, and why can they do so? Who can you encourage in their faith this week? Because it's not about individual faith, is it? Let us mature is a call about the group to mature. Who can you encourage in their faith, and how will you do it? I'm pretty sure it's going to take communication. Prayer is a good part, but it's going to take communication. Phone call, text or email is a good start even. Hospitality, but to encourage somebody is to find out where they're at and to encourage them to keep the same course, to make adjustments, to let them know that you've got their back, that we're doing this together. I've been thinking about you. That takes communication. Next week, Father's Day. I'm going to take a look at the passages in Hebrews chapter 12 with the theme, Let Us Appreciate.